Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Raising Millionaires podcast. I am your co host, Roger Bryan, and that's.
Is Richard Lorenzen.
So, Richard, we were just chatting. You're in the city today. Was there any specific thing that brought you in?
I've been back to back with client meetings all day. We had some TV this morning as well at the New York Stock Exchange. So we had some clients down at the New York Stock Exchange. We did interviews about the market, about the Fed, about the terrible job numbers that came out this morning. Yeah,
We'll talk about how they're manipulating. What those numbers actually are here in a little bit.
yes. Okay.
So it's funny. I went home for lunch today, and my son asked me why I was so dressed up. And I'm like, oh, I've been filming today because I'm creating my own AI avatar of myself. And he kind of looked at me and he's like, okay, and then kind of walked away. So I don't know he was super interested in an AI avatar, but I did do a bunch of filming today to hopefully be able to replicate myself. It should be interesting, see how that turns out.
I need to do that too because I need to be in two places at once, at least three more
Well,
times.
if this works, it's really cool because I can take pre-existing content and refilm it with me as an avatar in different settings, and then multiply the use of that content exponentially without it being duplicate.
That's cool. Can it go to meetings in person for me?
Getting close on that. Did you see the video of someone who tried to do a Zoom call with a judge and used an AI attorney, and the
Oh,
judge figured it out about 2 minutes in and started messing with it?
no. Tell
Oh, it's
me more.
hilarious. You have to look that up online.
Okay. Was
Okay.
that an avatar? Like there was a face on the screen, but it was
Oh,
an
yeah,
AI?
it looked like a regular person, but it was AI. And it just started giving really weird responses. So the judge started asking really weird questions, like with this puzzled look on her face. And then I think she finally got it. I am sure that did not go well for the person that did it.
Save a fortune on legal fees.
Yeah, you'll probably need it for bail after AI gets you put in jail.
Okay.
All right,
So,
today, what I wanted to talk about is we live in a hustle society, especially in the United States.
yeah.
You know better than most, real success comes from picking one hustle and focusing in on it with everything that you got. Right? You see the videos Hormozi talks about, even in his journey at one point in time, he had like 10 different businesses, all making a decent amount of money. And then his wife told him, you know what? We're condensing them all into one and we're going all in. And it was like 100x in like 3 years from that point with that focus. So I want to talk about that today because for those that are out there right now that are dibbling and dabbling in this, that, or the other, is dibbling and dabbling even English? Like they're trying to make money every way that they can, not realizing that if they just focus in on one thing, they'd probably make exponentially more. Does that
Yep.
sound like something you're good to talk about today?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So,
First question for you. How
yes,
did you know your hustle was the right hustle?
I did not. I doubted it a lot the first couple of years. Um,
Well, here you are 20 years later still doing it. So what was the light bulb that went off?
because I think, really when it comes to like picking a niche, like this is something we talked about this last week too. Like when it comes to picking a niche, I think a lot of people think that like your outcome in business is predicated on finding that right niche or that unique idea or product. When a lot of times you can make just about any type of business or product successful if, back to your earlier point before, you're number one focused on it long enough, and number two you're consistent enough. And so yeah, in the beginning, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I was very tempted to chase like the latest shiny object and the latest trend. But then as time goes on and you start to get some momentum, then you start to see the results. um so yeah, I mean, I didn't go into PR saying like this is the best the best business idea, and this is what I should pursue to make a lot of money. um at the same time, I don't think, to me it's not really about finding that one perfect idea. It's just about pursuing something long enough that it works. I don't know. That was
Well,
a terrible answer, but
no, it makes sense. One of the things that I've seen as to why people fail in side hustles is they have so many of them. You just had an experience recently, and I've seen this throughout my career as a hiring manager or business owner, that you've got great employees, but there's always this opportunity, especially with like warehouse work or in field work, where they may have a side job that they can go do for a day that's going to pay them not only maybe a little bit more than the hourly they would have gotten working for you, but cash in hand today, right? And then they choose to go do that side hustle, that cash in hand, that maybe a little bit extra. But what they don't realize is that their full time gig then suffers, right?
yep,
Their credibility there, their stability there, their growth there, in even your customer base, right? If you're an entrepreneur who's working on a lot of different side hustles, your customers are not getting everything from you unless you put management in place that delivers that for the business. But those most side hustles fail. One, lack of focus, and two, you said it, lack of consistency or commitment.
yep,
I had a partner when I worked in Washington, D.C. in the auto auction business. Like the first week that I worked for them, he's like, you show me someone who sticks to a business for 2 years, doesn't stop, doesn't get distracted, and they will have $1 million a year business. And
mhm,
that was 15 years ago. It happens so much faster today than it even did back then. But it's true because most people, you're lucky to get 3 or 6 months out of them in one thing
yep.
before it's the next one. Oh, this looks easier. Or my side hustle is failing because I hit a roadblock that I don't want to apply the effort or energy to overcome. There
Mhm.
are no failures in business. There's only quitting. And that's why most side hustles fail, at least in my point of view.
Yep. I think there's a lot of good points there because, like you said at the top of the show, you talked about hustle culture and you also talked about like focus. To me, I view those two things as separate things, the hustle culture and the focus. The focus part, I'm a big believer in. I think you need to focus on one business and just do one thing. Hustle culture, I think, is a bunch of nonsense. If you're talking about like, like Gary V style, like hustle your face off, like work 24/7. I don't think that that works, but I do think you need to be focused on one thing. Um, and also, from a branding standpoint as well, when we talk about what's one of the reasons why focus works so well, is because for example, like sometimes I'll come across someone who's the founder of a company, and I'll go to their LinkedIn, and their LinkedIn lists them as being CEO of like currently being CEO of five different companies in disparate industries. And to me, like now as somebody who's been doing this for a long time now, only 20 years, like that's usually one of the telltale signs that this person probably wasn't unless they're Elon Musk, and these people are so rare. This
Yeah,
person
everyone thinks they're Elon Musk, but no one's Elon Musk.
right, like this person really hasn't been most likely successful at any of these five companies that they're running. Because if they were, if any one of these companies were successful, it's extremely difficult to run more than one successful company at any one time. Especially as CEO. Maybe you're a founder, non-executive chairman, but as CEO, it's very difficult. So I do think you have to focus. You have to choose one thing. You have to persist at it for a really long time. If you do that, you can make much more money than you would by trying to diversify or multiple streams of income and all this garbage that gets promoted sometimes in like the self-help industry. You need one stream of income when you're starting out, and you need to focus all of your energy into that one stream of income. And if you do it long
So
enough,
then the question is, okay, we've got people listening to this podcast who are sitting there and they've got a full-time job and they've got a side hustle. When is it the right time to quit the full-time job and go all in on that side hustle?
so in one sense, I'll preface all of this before I answer that by saying I'm not the best person to speak to this because I can't relate, right? Like I started my company when I was so young that I never had a full-time job outside of running my company. I had the luxury of starting the company when I was in high school, when I lived at home with my parents, had no bills, and built a very successful company, and I'm still running to that company to this day. So I'm maybe not the best person. But here's my unpopular take on it, which is that I don't think you can start a business while you're working a full-time job. I know that there are some people that have done it, and again, like Elon Musk runs a bunch of companies. There are exceptions to every rule, but I think most people should not. I don't think you can build a company. If you're looking to become an entrepreneur, I don't think the best way to do it is let me start a company at night on the side, and when the revenue from that company surpasses my income from my job, then I'll quit my job and I'll focus on the company. There are certainly, I know people that it's worked for, but I think they're more the exception than the rule. I
Well, they are, but I think you actually like the way that I would answer that is exactly what you just said, right? There's two really signals for me that if I was talking to someone and they're like, hey, this is what I've got going on, I'm thinking about quitting my full time job and going all in on my side hustle, is one, what you just said. The income from the side hustle now surpasses the income of the main job.
I just think it's really hard to get there if you're working a main
Well,
job.
no, it is really hard to get there, but that's why it's a side hustle. It's not a side hobby, right? We're going to talk about in a second with the difference between a hobby and a hustle, because a hustle is going to take everything that you have and then 10% more to get off the ground. Let's go back to the question. So
So
if
yeah,
if somebody was asking me, like, when should I quit my job? One, is the income from your side hustle greater than your current income? And do you see that you'll have the ability to grow it even more if you go full time in it? The other one is, or it's like the third leg of that stool, if you have at least 6 months of living expenses saved in an account as well, right? So your side hustle is doing more than your current. It has growth potential if you gave it everything that you have, and you've got 6 months runway in your bank account, and you're passionate about it, like it's something you actually want to do. What is it they say? Like 73% of Americans hate their job.
yeah.
So, right, if you've got everything else lined up, you've got to go for it. You've only got one life. The worst thing that could happen is you fail and you got to go out and find another job.
Right. That's what I would say. So I mean, if you have a side hustle and you want it to become your full-time hustle, you have to quit your job. So like that looks like different things for everybody depending on where you're at in life. If you're a young single person with no obligations, like you can afford to take the risk to, hold your breath for 6 months and see if you can pull it off regardless of what your current situation is. If you're 40 years old and you've got 4 kids, like maybe you want to have a year of cash. And you said 6 months. Like to me, maybe you want to have a year of cash in the bank and then quit your job and focus on building the. So it looks different for different phases of life. But I think the common thing is you've got to be able to quit your job and focus on your business full time.
This also brings up something that's coming out of Silicon Valley, but that it's spreading a little bit more and more people are talking about it. It's the 996 culture, working from 9 a.m. in the morning till 9 p.m. at night, 6 days a week. But there is something like when I think back to like my earliest successes in business, although 996 was not anything I'd ever heard of, that's really about how much I worked when I was in DC starting my first company, right? It might have actually been like 6. Well, I don't want to say 6. That sounds terrible, but it would. Like I'd be in the office at 6 a.m. I'd work till 6 p.m. and I was there Monday through Saturday, right? So I was doing 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Um, I agree. I don't know if it's Hormozy, if it's Gary Vee or someone that was saying it recently, like if you're in your 20s, you've got to be working like that because it will only make your 30s and 40s and 50s
Yeah.
that much better. If you're trying to work as little as possible in your 20s, unless you've got a trust fund or right the stars aligned and you've got a career that AI isn't coming for, right? That's the time to be all in on it. You don't have the responsibility. You don't have the need for time with family at that point. It just makes perfect sense to me if you're in your 20s to be like I almost said crushing it like that, but working like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be I do think there needs to be some boundaries there. But yeah, if I probably did that too. Like when you're in your 20, if you're in your 20s, you're building a business, you have to work a lot. some of this whole hustle culture stuff, though, I think in the last few years has kind of gotten a little bit like over the top. I think you need to have. I've found as I got older, ironically, like I worked, I probably worked a lot in my 20s as I think about it. And I made a lot of really good money, so like it worked out well. But as I also think about it, as I've gotten older now in my 30s, I've actually made a lot more money prioritizing things a little bit better, and also prioritizing taking care of myself better. That I feel like that helps you go the distance in the long run. See, you've got to have some boundaries there, but yeah, if you're starting a business and you're young, like especially in the beginning of your career, you've got to work a lot. And also, as someone coming from New York, where everybody works, like ridiculous hours, um, there's also a lot of peer pressure around. It's easy if you run your own company, but if you're a banker working at a big firm like Goldman or
There's
some,
expectation there, right?
yeah, if everybody else is at the office until 2 o'clock in the morning, 6 to 7 days a week, which is very common. I know a lot of people who do it. It's hard to be the guy who goes home at 8 p.m. Because you're viewed as slacking. So
Yep.
it's not easy when you're not the owner of the company. I get that too.
Yeah, and I think back too, and I think there was something that you said that makes perfect sense, is that does the whole the that I combine the word culture and hustle into culture. Does the culture change? The culture of hustle change as you age?
Oh yeah.
And I've always thought about this, especially when I was teaching at the local high school. There was this point maybe 10 years ago where I started to see my own hustle, I can't stop saying it now, change. And I was wondering, is like, am I slowing down? But the reality was, no, I had a better appreciation for time. And I thought that my experience allowed me to apply effort more in a more focused manner that allowed me to get greater outcome or greater output with less effort.
You also have more experience and skills,
The
so like you can
experience that allows you
you
to
can
do
do
that.
more in less time than.
That's interesting though, is you would think, right? They're positioning them, right? Let's just say it's Benioff is saying AI is going to allow you to do more in less time. But the
Mhm.
reality is they're making those that are still doing do more while less get to do. So the Industrial Revolution was no different. They're like, hey, you're not going to have to work 12 hours on the farm anymore from sun up to sundown. By the way, come into the factory. We've got electricity now. You can work 16 hours, but you're going to be more productive. So
Yep.
it'll be interesting to see how AI affects the whole hustle culture.
I feel like it wouldn't change it, because it's just the nature of a lot, especially big corporations. Like they want to squeeze every ounce of.
Of blood out of their employees. I
Yeah,
mean,
they want to squeeze out every ounce, and so and it becomes a culture thing, especially here in the U.S., where there's this peer pressure again, like I said before, to keep up, and so even at the company level, like if I'm XYZ Corp and the other two companies in my industry are churning, 24/7, you start to feel some pressure to be able to keep up with that. So. Yeah, I feel like AI probably isn't going to change hustle culture very much, even with the increases in productivity.
so with those individuals that are out there that are, whether it's a main job, it's in a side hustle, or multiple side hustles, or a combination of all of the above, we talked about when to quit your full-time job, but if we're talking about a specific side hustle, what are the signals to double down on a side hustle versus to walk away from a side hustle?
I think there needs to be a clear economic model. Like there are a lot of people who love making trinkets. Maybe you love making handmade Christmas ornaments, right? But if there's not a clear economic model for how you would monetize it, and you can see some proof of the model there, like it's generated a little bit of revenue, um, that might not be something that can become a real business. The good thing is with technology nowadays, like you can build an economic model around almost anything, right? Like thanks to social media and all these different platforms that you can use to reach markets, like you can monetize a lot of things, but I think there needs to be a clear economic model.
Yeah, I saw a great, I don't want to call it a quote, but it was a school community. and there was a question asked about how do I know if the product that I'm trying to sell or the business that I'm working on is a good idea, and should I keep doing it or should I walk away? And I believe it was a community, Travis Sago's community, and
Mm.
his thing was if you've been at it for 6 months and you still can't make money, it's time to walk away, right? His magic number was 6 months. Um, and that would be a side hustle. Of course, you can't like if your full-time job isn't making money for 6 months and you don't have millions of dollars in the bank or a lot of money saved up, it's probably going to be a problem. So double down or walk away was kind of a 6 month break point. And I kind of agree with that. If you can get a business to break even while you learn it, you build out infrastructure, you dial in marketing, you get your offer right, and it's sustainable, and then it starts to profit, then right, max out that credit card, double down, quadruple down, and see how much of that widget or that service that you can sell, as long as the ROI is there. So 6 months, throw it away. If you're breaking even and you start to profit, double down as quick as humanly possible. Don't wait, don't think, just do it. And typically it'll work out a lot better than just sitting on your hands.
I think the asterisk there too is unless you're venture backed.
Well, most people
I
listening to this are not venture backed. Oh, we should talk about that after this segment. How bad funding's getting outside of the mega cap AI plays. Like funding's drying up for anything non AI now. Well, hold on. I want to talk about that later. Don't get me distracted.
Yeah.
I want to finish off this. I have two more thoughts on the side hustle culture. So, is the hustle culture a scam?
Yes.
Well, age dependent, no?
Interesting. Is the hustle culture a scam? Well, I feel like it's not a scam to say work hard, right? But I think that there are people that are probably exploiting the notion of hustle culture.
Let's
Uh,
talk about that for a second because you're spot on. If you scroll your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed, the majority of the products being sold, especially in the make money, biz op, marketing, lead gen, email, all of those spaces, right? 90% plus of the people selling those are selling into the hustle culture of people that aren't sticking to things for more than 3 to 6 months. They make it sound like they are the silver bullet solution to every problem you have as an entrepreneur who cannot focus, and they're only there to take your money. It has gotten so bad, and there's so little recourse that legitimately you wire money to people, and the next day they're like, ha ha, sucker, in a nonchalant way. They give you access to some platform, and they're like, oh, go do it. And you're like, no, you said that. Nah, they're like, nah, nah, nah. Good luck on getting your money back. And you have to be really careful of that because it has become a predatory environment
yep.
for this hustle culture. I didn't even think of talking about that, but you hit it spot on. I've been the victim of it many times because I'll buy everything and anything to solve a problem, and typically I'll find the solution, but a lot of it's wasted on people that are just straight up scammers.
So every guru watching this is adding you to their retargeting for their funnels right now for their offers.
Probably, yeah. In fact, if you've got a great AI solution to call center operations for local service businesses, everyone out there sucks, right? And I'm sick of looking at all these advanced automations, right? All I want you to do is connect the call in under 3 seconds. If you can do that, the AI will win. Make sure to add me to your retargeting. My email address is roger@results.io. I will buy your stuff. I need to solve this problem badly, and everything that I look at is terrible, terrible, terrible. Sorry, sidebar.
Yeah. No, but that's a good point. I mean, yeah, so hustle culture, yeah, I mean, working hard, good work ethic is not a scam. If anything, there's not enough of it in in culture right now. But I think the idea that you have to work around the clock until 2 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week to make a business work, like if you need to do that to make a business work, then maybe the business isn't viable either. I know you got to work hard, but like you have to work until 2 o'clock in the morning and like practically kill yourself. Like you're more effective in your decision making and in your productivity if you're putting in, a normal, let's say 10-hour day, even, uh, 5 days a week, and taking the rest of the time to prioritize personal growth, rest. In the long run, I think you'll build a more successful business that way.
You just made a really good point. I had a trait that I don't know where it came from. And I feel like many entrepreneurs have it, especially those that are working like 12, 16, 18-hour days, is that you feel like you need to work that much to be successful, or you spend that much time
Mhm.
doing work trying to be successful. And I think it was 2012, which would be a long time ago now. I remember sitting down and talking with Kevin Nations, and it's like he instantly saw that that was one of my traits. And for the next 2 years, he worked with me on doing nothing when there's nothing to do, right? You're waiting for an email sequence to run for 5 days. Don't sit there and look at it every 5 minutes, refreshing the analytics and keep rewriting it, right? If you don't have something of high value, high impact that can make you money right now, get up and go for a walk. Go sit
Yep.
at the park for an hour. Go get a coffee. Entrepreneurs can create more damage in their business by trying to be busy versus trying to be productive. And that productivity as an entrepreneur is usually directly aligned with reverse engineering a goal back to the micro tasks that it takes to accomplish it. A whole different conversation, but in the hustle culture, it's work, 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 throw this up, throw that up.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
people
people
that'll run
always
30
have to
ads in a
do.
day. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but I had to learn to do less to be able to accomplish more.
I think, yeah, they're trying to create the expectation that like you always need to be doing something, which goes to like the last dimension of this, and then we can move on since we're like really peeling it back. Is I feel like a lot of this hustle culture, and the reason why I wouldn't want like my kids learning from like some of these gurus posting online about hustle culture and 24/7 work is because it also becomes this slippery slope where you find all of your personal like self-worth in your performance
Oh,
as an
yes.
entrepreneur, and it becomes your identity. And that can become a very dangerous thing when you're finding your when you're pursuing an identity and finding your value in how many hours did I work today, did I nail my morning routine just right. uh I think that becomes a very slippery slope.
No, you
Here.
again, you hit the nail on the head. And it's funny, I mentioned before starting to work with Kevin Nations at the end of 2012. When I sold my first agency, 2012, I remember it was Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2012. The deal was done, but then it ended up getting stuck for 6 months going through legal. And I wasn't allowed to do anything. So here I went from working like 16 hours a day, being like, I wasn't Roger Bryan. I was National Charity Services. I was
Mhm.
at a conference, or if I was at a conference, I was National Charity Services. If I was doing sales, if I was traveling, there was no Roger Bryan.
Yep.
So when that sold, that was the deepest early depression I'd ever had in my life. It was the most miserable I think that I had ever been. And you think you're getting a check, a large check that you're like, hey, this is exactly what life is supposed to be. But yeah, the hustle culture can destroy you if you lose your self identity in that work.
Yep.
Okay,
Well said.
there is one more question I want to do here because we're there's no there is a lot of negative connotation with the hustle culture, but at certain points in time in your life, you do need to hustle. You need to work your butt off, right? I don't care if you're 20 or if you're 40, depending on your finances and what your family needs, there's going to be times where you're going to have to work those hours. You're going to have to do two things if your one thing isn't the right thing or the one thing can't produce enough. But then the question becomes, and it's that trigger, right? How do you, with your hustle, take maybe that first $500 that you've earned with it and turn it into $50,000, right? It's that 10x push button or lever that goes like, how do you do that? And how do you know when it's the right time to push that button and make it happen?
So
Is
to
it when you
me,
call Grant Cardone and you're like, 10X hotline. How may I help you?
Well, so to me, I mean, what I would do is I think anything that we're talking about, even below like $500, yes, but even below anything below $10,000, the best way you can reinvest that money is reinvesting into your skills, which is ironically probably a similar response to what Cardone would give you, because he would want you to buy Cardone University. Um, but I think, yeah, you need to find some sort of way to reinvest into some sort of education or training, um, that's going to grow your skill set so that you can keep producing, whether you're growing your skills in sales, negotiation, marketing, whatever it might be that's relevant to your business. Uh, there's no other investment you're going to buy, I think, that's going to get you a better return on something like $500 than
Yep.
some kind of training class, education, whatever it is, a mentor, whatever you can figure out how to you get access to. That's what you need to be doing with those first couple of dollars.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to these side hustles or even your primary business, right? If you've made $500 in profit off of your product and you feel like you have the skills, for me, the second lever really is marketing, right? Knowing when you've hit that product market fit and knowing when it's the right time to max out those credit cards, because I guarantee I've seen more people miss the opportunity to leverage up than I have found those people that understand that that moment is so fleeting. And then if you wait, most people are like, I see it, but I don't want to acknowledge that it's there. I want to figure it out more. I want to get it more right. And then the moment passes and it's gone. So having the confidence and the data to support that it's time to
Yep.
max out credit cards, I think is the second part of that. All right, let's end the hustle conversation and turn over to the markets. There's a lot of stuff going on. This market keeps climbing no matter what is thrown at it.
Yep.
The worst revision in jobs reports in 25 years, and what do we get? All-time highs in the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. It makes perfect sense to me why that would happen, right, Richard?
Although the market's not up that much today, it's up, a fraction of a percentage point. But yeah, I mean,
But it is all-time highs.
we're still sitting at an all-time high.
So what I
Uh,
said isn't incorrect. Worst jobs revision ever, and markets still hit an all-time high.
yeah, I mean, the unemployment report was revised down by like almost a million jobs.
Insane.
Um,
Even Leisman on CNBC this morning, I don't think he said this can't be right, but he's like, you can hear him flipping through papers, and he's like he was just in shock.
yep. I
Now,
think
this is what gets the Fed to cut.
yes, that's what I was going to.
So we just put a new person in charge of the BLS, Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and we
Yep.
get the worst report ever. Coincidence, reality, or is it fabricated like Epstein's birthday note from Trump?
Well, I mean, the report that came out before this one with the previous person was also very, very bad. One of the worst reports we've ever seen. So I don't know if
You just
I,
sounded like Trump. It's one of the worst I've ever seen. I've never seen something so bad. It's
there's no
so
other.
bad that even the bad doesn't know how bad it is
So,
bad.
but I mean, so I don't know if I would question the integrity of this particular report. I think it legitimately
Well,
is
that
that.
doesn't make for a good
Um,
podcast. Come
but,
on.
but the question is, it set it because, like you said, it does set the stage for an interest rate cut next week, which is on the 17th, the Fed meeting, and then after that, what happens to the job report? Once we see interest rates start to come down, that I think will be more interesting. Um, I'm also pondering, we were looking for a quarter point cut next week on the 17th. I think it could be a half point after.
Yeah, they were talking about that a lot today too, and the probability is still really low of a half point. But it does, like, if they came in with a half point, you just market rally continues.
No, but so here's my follow up on that. Uh, my controversial opinion is that I think this is going to be a sell the news event. I think when the Fed comes out, whether it's a quarter point or a half point, I think the market sells off on that, and we start
Even
moving.
a half point, you think it sells off?
At a half point, I think would really trigger a sell off because to me that communicates that the Fed actually believes the economy is much worse than I may
Interesting.
have thought. So I think there are expectations for a quarter point, so it might be a more muted market reaction. But I think at the sell-off,
I have to argue with you for 1 second. That's intelligent, logical thinking. That's not this market.
yeah, but everything that goes up eventually comes
It
down.
does, and the more that it goes up, the more spectacularly it comes down. So,
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think if anything, we're really going to trigger a sell-off right now. A half point cut might do it because that's
that's
signaling that
interesting. I have not thought
off.
of it that way.
I can't think of what else might trigger if you look ahead at like the calendar for the next couple of weeks heading into like October. I
Well,
can't.
you would think that the jobs report would have done it today, showing economic weakness, but its stability lets me believe that the rate cut is the supporting factor to the overall market, and that there's money that will come out of treasuries and into the market as the rates get lower and the return gets lower on it. Right, best place to park money. There's also still, what is it, $7 trillion in cash on the sidelines.
Yep.
I don't know.
There's a lot
None
of
of this
cap.
makes sense to me, right? I have done less trading since April than I've probably done in any given 6 month time period because it just doesn't make sense to me.
So let me ask you another. This zooms out for a minute on a totally different kind of, but related. Do you think that with everything we're seeing in equity markets right now, combined you pointed out the dry powder that's on the sidelines, but there's also a lot of dry powder sitting on the sidelines in private equity, and we've talked about the last couple of
Illiquid,
weeks
yep.
how more and more companies are choosing to stay private because why go public when there's all this dry powder in private equity? Do you think that we're looking at the beginning of a longer term drawdown in capital in public markets because investors are, especially with if Trump does away with the accredited investor requirement,
So,
do you think that there's just much more activity and volume going to private
okay,
markets?
so I've been an accredited investor and invested in that space for a decade.
Me too.
What my biggest fear is right now, all of this like access to 401k money to go into the middle markets, the private markets, removing the accredited investor certification, right? It makes me think of like crypto in 2018 and like the Web3 world in 2022. And it's like, who's going to be the biggest sucker? Who's going to be the one left holding the bag? Right now, private equity is left holding massive amounts of wealth on paper,
Yep.
right? They need exit dummies, right? That doesn't mean there aren't some winners in there, but if you bring all of that capital into the market, right?
Yep.
That doesn't mean that if the projects are illiquid right now, that doesn't mean that by bringing in more capital, it actually makes the companies worth more. It actually makes them worth less. Because the companies that are actually worth money are not having trouble getting the liquidity that they need out of their equity.
Hmm.
It's the other 99% of like $4 trillion in private equity wealth that's sitting on paper in crap projects that are going to get unloaded to the general public so that the rich can take their balloon payments and move on to the next ones again. Right? Everyone in private equity makes their money on the transaction, not on the hold.
So to me, that speaks even more than to kind of like the decline basically of public markets long term.
Yeah, if those things pass, I want to figure out like if where is the short on the middle market,
Mm.
right? If they're going to open it up to more capital inflows, how can other people short? Because I'm not the only one sitting here thinking about the fact that these companies are worthless.
Yep. No, it's a good point. I mean, because if you're a high net worth investor right now, and even a lot of institutional investors, like for the most part, you're looking a lot more significantly at private markets now than you were a decade, 2 decades ago. So obviously there are still lots of big players in the public markets, but But what you're seeing in the private markets is lots of big players, very few little players, because retail, mom and pop don't have access to those right now. Um, and so as some of these PE portfolio companies get dumped into the public markets, like who's going to lose on those deals? A lot of times it's the retail investors, but if they do away with the accredited, rule, eventually I think you start seeing everybody start shifting towards private markets.
Yeah, well, a good example of this is Start Engine, right?
Yeah.
They've helped thousands of companies raise money, and I invested in dozens of them. They're all
Yep.
worthless, right? That's really what this is going to be. Even Start Engine itself is basically worthless. Every time Mr. Wonderful does a live on LinkedIn, I want a message like, what are you doing about my stock? Like, I own a lot of stock in Start Engine, and it
Yeah.
is basically worthless. It's worth like, I think 15 cents, and I don't think it trades anywhere reasonably. Um, that to me, Start Engine 2018 to right now, is exactly what's going to happen to most of this middle market paper that gets moved into individual investors' hands through 401ks, through no longer needing accreditation. It is an absolute disaster that is completely designed to give exit liquidity to the smart money, followed up by dumb money. There'll be
So
a few winners in there, don't get me wrong. But 99% of people that move their money into that are going to lose their retirement, right? They're going to go chasing bad deals, and private equity is just going to walk away laughing their tails off.
I don't disagree with that at all. Most of the companies that if you're an angel, if you're a VC, even PE, most of the companies you invest in, that's kind of the game, right? Most of them go to zero. But at the same time, most of the emerging unicorns right now, well, most of them are also only in the private market. And so what does that leave in the public market? Zombie companies getting dumped by PE, obviously blue chip and all of that, but I'm thinking about over the long run. Um,
If
I
the
don't
company
know.
was valuable, though, wouldn't there be more private equity money coming behind it? Or wouldn't there be a road to an IPO? And I know we've talked about this a lot. A lot more of the companies are staying private because of these sky high valuations and the amount of liquidity in the secondary markets and in private equity. But if that money's drying up, that doesn't make those companies any better.
True, that's true.
If you think about it, I've probably got a couple dozen projects that could use some exit liquidity right now. So I'm actually hurting myself saying a lot of this. One thing that I noticed too this summer, a lot of the funds that Block Capital is involved in have done significant write downs on the book value of non-liquid assets, right? Projects that never made it to TGE, that never made it live, and it's a good and a bad thing, right? You're carrying on paper all this wealth when in reality it's probably never going to transpire,
Yep.
but proper bookkeeping for that says that there must be some type of trigger event to revalue the asset, which
Right.
is typically, right, you buy it at 10 cents, it goes public at a penny, right, down 90%. Okay, now you book the loss. But they're all of a sudden now writing down because they've got these huge valuations that are just totally unfounded. I have seen 43 to 47% drop in a fund value, but it's because they're just getting rid of assets that are never going to be worth anything anyways.
Well, for you as an investor too, when they do those markdowns and those haircuts, like if you're able to exit, if you're able to exit, that also gives you a harvestable tax loss that you can.
Well, kind of, sort of. It depends on how it's structured, right? Because you can only get certain amounts of losses and certain amounts of carryover,
Yeah.
right? Now, this is inside of a fund, which is inside of a corporation that has its own P&L. So the way that the tax structure is done for that is significantly different than as an individual investor, where you
Yep.
probably couldn't take advantage of that. But also, if you think about this, a lot of these projects that are being written down, if they had access to taking them into some type of non-accredited 401k middle market with a lot of money in it, right? They could probably put together a good pitch and a good deck, which is what got us to invest to begin with, and then bigger sucker. That's all it is. Who's the biggest
Well,
sucker?
just a couple weeks ago, I think it was a couple weeks ago, the administration, Trump administration, came out and said that I don't know if it was an executive order, but there was some kind of directive that was given to find a way to open up private equity to
Yep.
401ks. That would be a massive pool. Obviously it's not going to happen overnight. Like even if it becomes legal, it's going to take time for number one, the broker dealers to start selling it, and number two, for actual people to start putting it to their portfolio allocation. But that would be a massive pool of liquidity for private equity, which already has so much liquidity. Um, it's good. That's going to be an interesting catalyst as well for kind of what the future of capital markets looks like.
No, it absolutely will. And that again, that goes back to what I keep talking about is scaring me so much. There was what was the name of the company? Yesterday, there was an article on CNBC talking about this company that was trying to raise money to build nuclear reactors that are stored a mile underground. They couldn't raise the money that they needed, so they went public through a reverse merger or a SPAC.
Mm-hmm.
The stock hasn't started trading yet, but it's like I read the article and they're talking about this exciting opportunity, and all I saw out of it was so they couldn't raise the money in the private markets, so
We
they
couldn't get
reversed back to take it to the
it.
public markets. They wanted to raise 10 million, they ended up getting 4 million out of the SPAC, and I'm like, isn't this a sign of how bad this is for public investors?
Yeah, if you couldn't get the money from the smart people.
Go get it from the dumb people. And remember, I'm not calling individual investors dumb. There is a saying dumb money, which is retail investors. There's movies about it and all that kind of stuff. It's a term, not an opinion, before anybody
Yeah.
gets pissed at me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you have professional investors who do this for a living, all day, every day, and they're running a private equity fund and looking at these kinds of deals of what they do, and if they're all passing on it, there's a reason, right? But if for you to go public through a reverse merger, do a SPAC, in some ways it's easier to do that than to get a PE fund to buy into your idea. So in a lot of ways, crappy ideas do get pawned off on investors who are more passive, who are not doing this every single day for a living.
Didn't Donald Jr. just do a reverse SPAC on a gun company through Truth Social promotion, then like imploded?
I don't know, maybe. Isn't Trump's social media, the DJT, whatever it is, isn't that a SPAC?
I think it is.
That's a SPAC.
Right, it's funny. Like you've got an administration where the family is doing these deals left and right, and then changing regulation to make it easier to do those deals.
It's interesting that there was an article a couple days ago. Um, Trump's net worth has doubled in the 7 months, whatever it is now, 9 months that he's been
But
in
he
office.
doesn't take a presidential salary, so it's okay, right?
So, yeah, it's yeah, I'm not saying anything either way, but it's
No, no, I know. And I mean, it's just the reality of this is our first, let's call him like commerce president, right? We've never had a president like this before. It
yeah.
would have been like, and I'm not in any way comparing Trump to JP Morgan, but like JP Morgan's involvement with the government when he bailed the government out from financial failure was the closest that line has ever been drawn. And just this is a president where politics are driven by commerce and money. And I'm not here to judge good or bad. The history books will do that. There are some good. We've talked many times about whether or not there's this huge sovereign wealth fund being built in the back end of everything that is going to come out one day. I will say this. I was at the county fair Sunday. We went to the Buckeyes game on Saturday, and on the way back, we went to get chicken barbecue at the county fair. And I saw an older gentleman walking around with a Trump 2028 hat. And I wanted to, like, I'm thinking to myself, do you know that like, he can't do that? He can't run for a third term? But that's, like, it makes me nervous of what's coming in the next coming years.
Well, maybe one of his kids would run.
Oh, maybe it means someone else. You know what's funny too? I still wonder. Like, I would potentially vote for Eric Trump based on what I know about him from a decade ago, but I don't know how his thought process has changed today.
This is now we're just like totally speculating, but I feel like Don Jr. would be the one that more have this.
No, no, no. Unless him and Biden's son are gonna have a fucking party. Sorry, man. There goes the explicit category again. Maybe Hunter Biden and Donald Trump Jr. can have a White House party where it's snowing, if you know what I mean.
Moving on.
Moving on. All right, let's get back. All right, we always talk about AI because it is such a big part of everyone's entrepreneur journey, personal journey. So, developer out of oh man, I have this up, not Sweden, was talking about how people are worried about the small percentage of jobs they're going to be replaced by AI. And his view is that by 2028, I mean, it was something that was like super soon. He's like, we don't realize that it's going to be 99% of jobs that have been replaced by AI and AI robotics. That in the next 2 years, we're going to see the robotics revolution. We talked about that on the last call about how to invest into that because it's the next huge growth mechanism for all of this. It's funny, now the article won't come up because I didn't save it or send it to you.
I mean, I'm not an AI scientist, but 99% of jobs, whether it's 2028 or 2038, seems
I mean, it's a scare tactic too.
It seems like a publicity grab. I can totally see a lot of white collar jobs being replaced by AI. I can't.
Well, and we talk about this a lot. I've talked about how what if AI doesn't get any smarter from here? I've talked about what AI agents can do and how to multi-layer agentic agent structure. But then I told you right before this call too, that's like I'm having my own breakthroughs with the use of AI. We're using AI to create strategy, but then using AI to compare the strategy to results, and then using AI to take the strategy, the results to create new strategy. And it's almost becoming its own agentic arch where it's continually improving upon itself. And that's really cool, but it's also a little scary.
Yeah.
Right? Right now, a lot of the vibe coding and a lot of the AI agents struggle with cron jobs, which is the automatic command to execute over and over and over again. But you can have agents that manually call, right? And so I'm thinking about how much my internal AI is learning about the work that I'm doing and how in like 2 months, I'm able to do the work of, I can work on 10 clients in the amount of time that I could work on one just 2 months ago as someone with 28 years of experience in marketing. So you'd think that I already know how to like scalpel versus machete a campaign, right? Look at the data. I can go right to where it needs to. My AI is starting to learn how to do that. But it can go further because once it realizes it, I have a database now, I think of like 78 strategies. It picks the best one based on the data and it builds it and it's ready to deploy. It doesn't self-deploy. It still takes a human to deploy. But I don't have to think about like which of these 78 are right. The data is telling it this is the right one. And then once it executes, it pulls back the data again and it's like, yeah, that was a good idea. Or no, let's tweak this. It's excitingly scary.
Yeah. I mean, the things that we're using AI for today are even, just from 90 days ago, it's different, right?
I do feel a little AI bipolar. Like 1 week I hate it, the next week I'm immensely amazed.
Most recently, last week, we completely redesigned our main corporate website using AI. We're building out the back end now, and it's probably going to launch in a month or so. But we completely redesigned the whole site, 100% using AI.
Well, I told you I built my own CMS and all of my websites are AI driven. The difference is you give me a concept, I can have an AI website up in 12 minutes. Like you just said a month, right? 12 minutes.
Or is that on WordPress?
No, it's its own AI engine so that every aspect of it from the analytics through the content update, through semantic indexing, it is all AI powered. Now, it does have its flaws. We've talked about those.
Yeah.
Right? It's not ready to scale. There's like 3 core problems that if they fixed, man, it would be on fire. And I just have to live with those until somebody else fixes them because I'm not that smart. But man, it's insane.
Hmm.
So 12 minutes, 1 month. Which sounds better, Richard?
Well, the problem for us is we're doing it on WordPress. I'm still too nervous to
No,
move like a
you're not wrong to be, right?
site.
Someone could go to my website and call out the core fundamental flaws that WordPress does not have as a problem. But to
Yeah.
me, again, 2 months ago, I told you all, like I built like 20 apps, right? I'm just building
Yep.
everything. And I said, eventually the platforms are going to catch up to where I need them to be. And as that happens, I start combining them. And it's like, holy cow, I put all of this together, like my task management, my AI brain, my campaign strategy, my analytics tool, they're all one now. And yes, there's still flaws, there's still holes, but it's humming.
It's crazy stuff.
All right. Any final thoughts for today's call?
Uh, no. I mean, markets are up. Where they're going to close in about 45 minutes, and it looks like we might be at another new high. So that is
After a
interesting.
revision down 1 million jobs, worst
That
revision
yeah.
in
So
25 years, makes perfect sense.
yep. So I mean, that's kind of the leading headline. But yeah, that's all I got.
All right. I think my final thought here is we talked today about the hustle culture, side hustles, a little bit of AI, a lot of economics. If I summarized all of this, is that it's so important to have a goal that you're working towards. You'll see this in so many videos that both of us have done, right? On my board right here on the front side is my business goal for the next year. On the back side is my wealth goal for the rest of my life, and they actually intertwine with each other. I know exactly what I need to accomplish each month from now until June in this business to hit the economic numbers that I want, and that ties directly into the back of the board where it's telling me exactly how I'm building my wealth and my legacy. If you ever have any questions about that, feel free to always drop a message below this podcast video. I'm happy to share other videos that we've done on wealth building, goal setting, financial planning, all of that kind of good stuff, legacy wealth building. We've got all kinds of great stuff. Don't forget to subscribe. If you manage to hang out this long on this podcast, you better subscribe, because now we're taking these podcasts and we're breaking it not only into shorts, but also into 5-minute digestible segments so that it makes it easier for you to get exactly what you want when you want. Thank you, Riverside FM. They just started doing that last week. And we'll see you next week. Have a good one.